Deola Sagoe is a Nigerian-born fashion designer who is popularly known by her design name, Deola Sagoe. She began designing in 1988 when she joined her mother's business with a view of expanding the label's repertoire. To mention a few of her world-class awards, Deola was rated number 37 on the African Almanac scale of 100 most influential Africans in the world. She became the first Black woman to present a collection at Alta Roma, Rome's celebrated fashion, and also the first Nigerian to have a standalone show at the New York Fashion Week. Among her many fabric innovations, the Komole Candidates collection, an authentic answer to every African's yearning for an original interpretation and crafting of lace, stands out distinctly.
Okay, so I would like to welcome everyone to this next session, this next conversation with Deola Sagoe, and I hope she's in already. Okay, yeah, I can see you. Hello, Deola, how are you?
Hi, Peju. I'm very good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much. I would have to show my face a bit so that people can recognize me before I put it off again. So I start my video. Okay,
there you are.
Yes. So thank you so much for coming, and I'm glad that you were able to sort out the internet problem. I was a bit worried at the beginning. So we'll start our conversation. We're starting a bit early, but it's fine. I'd like to say that I first met Deola Sagoe last year at the US Consul General's home. It was a cultural event and award night. I've been invited along with my mother, Princess Elizabeth Olowu, who was awarded a prize for arts and culture by 4 female ambassadors. It was an amazing event in Nigeria, celebrating the talents of several female creatives by foreign diplomats. So I met Deola Sagoe amongst the invitees, dressed up in this simple but elegant outfit. We got talking. I knew her more from her family roots and links, and so I told her I knew her mother. She appeared surprised. I also told her I had met her mother on 3 occasions, not in Lagos, but in her mother's hometown of Imesile. She was even the more surprised. Well, I'm sure most of you know that Imesile is an important town known historically for the Kiriji War. That was where the Kiriji War was fought, one of the big or famous Yoruba wars. So when this idea of conversations with reputable fashion designers came up, I instantly reached out to her and she obliged. So I'd like to thank you so much for joining us today, Deola.
Well, thank you so much, Peju. Honestly, I feel honored. And yeah. I'm so glad to be on this forum. I think it's an amazing initiative that you've started.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so we'll start. And I like also to talk about your early history, your family ties and background. I know of Odoa Creations, and that was a household name in Lagos at the time. And we are also aware that you started off by joining your mother in her business. So please tell us about this early part of your career and what role your mother played in growing your career as a designer.
Okay, thanks a lot, Peju. Actually, it basically really happened to me. I had been sent away to study in the United States, and I had gotten a degree in business administration, and I also got a master's in finance from the University of Lagos. And what happened was that the students went on riots, on protests in University of Lagos towards the end of my degree program. And I had to come back home like every other student had to. And my father said, well, you can't just stay at home and do nothing. Come into the family business and start to do something. So I looked at it and I thought, okay, let me go and help my mother in her little business that she had on the side, which was Udua. And I said, well, let me see how I'm going to help her, because she was always complaining about her errand tailors and stuff. So I said, okay, I'm going to come in with my business administrative skills and put them in order and stuff. And when I got there, she didn't have a designer to do her agbada designs and stuff. So I then came in and because I was very artistic anyway, I had been like that from when I was very young. And you know, fashion is an expression of art. So I just went in there and I thought, fantastic, I'm fed up of all these, their old design agbadas anyway, let's do something new. And because I was so much into art, I just thought to myself, why can't I do wearable art? Why can't I just do all kinds of contemporary stuff and just put them on the agbada? And this is how I started with my mother. I never looked back since. So I actually started my career designing for men. And if you allow me to share my screen, I can show you a few of my earlier designs. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now.
Good.
Sorry about that, but okay, let me go again and check. Oh, it doesn't seem to be. It's not coming up. Sorry about this, but I'll just keep talking whilst I try to figure that out. A lot of people think because I design for ladies now, you've seen a lot of my designs for ladies, and they don't know that I actually cut my teeth in fashion, making men's wear, which is very interesting. But so I became the in-house designer for my mom. And before you knew it, people caught on, and people caught on onto the way that I was interpreting my own menswear, especially in terms of contemporary embroidery. And I'm still trying to share. Okay, can everybody see that?
No, we can't see it yet.
Not yet.
We have to see these images. We must see these images. Okay, I think, yeah, we can see it now.
You can see it now. Okie dokie. Okay, great. Okay, so that's actually me at 21, actually modeling the agbadas that I started to design. And I remember this one was called the gong. If you look very closely, you can see the gong. You can see the gongs on like about 4 gongs right in front of the agbada. Yeah. So okay, so that's another agbada that I'm modeling on the left. And we had this amazing model at that time, Modella, Bayo Adegbe. He's now a designer himself.
Wow.
And but he used to model all our designs at that time. So yeah, so he's actually wearing a much more contemporary one. So yeah, so that's how I started. And as I said, from there I didn't look back. But then what I then started to do was that I then added a lot more. I started to do a lot of contemporary things for women as well.
Okay, that's quite interesting. But what happened to Odoa Creations? Did it close down or is still there?
No, Odoa Creations is still there. Wow. So basically, Odoa Creations has stuck to the traditional wear, and it does just for men. But you know, Odoa Creations actually started, I would say, in the 60s. It's just that it was never called Odoa Creations at the time. My mother, when she was in university, she obviously was very creative. And when my father and her were in the University of Nigeria, they had dreamed together to have a business together that they would call Elizade. That was Elizabeth and Ade. So they started Elizade as Elizade Independent Agencies, where they sold different things. So my mother used to make her own clothing, and clothing for my dad from uni. And the first model actually who wore the clothes and went out to actually sell them was my dad, you know. So when he would go out to sell whatever it was to market, he would put on his shirts that my mother made. And very soon, my mother started to supply the PZ and Kingsway. Wow. She was making clothes for babies. I remember I was always surrounded with babies' little panties and little dresses and stuff. And before you knew it, she started supplying PZ in those days. And I remember that her clothes always stuck out. It was always about the finish, about the fabric, you know, and about her. She was a perfectionist when it came to things like that. And before you knew it as well, Muka Foam got her to start making their mattress covers, and she went into school uniforms. So all that time, I grew up surrounded by pieces of fabric,
So are you the only one doing fashion in the family? What about your siblings? I know that the home is also made of two parts, mother, your father. You talked about Elizade, but I want you to to say more about the company and how all of this influenced you. Your mother was, by the way, your mother was a very beautiful woman, and she dressed very simply, but you could tell that this woman had class, you know.
Thank you. You described that exactly.
You see what I mean? So I know her well. And how did this home that Deola grew up in translate to the house of Deola? And I'm particularly interested in your background in relation to your father and also your siblings. So maybe you want to talk about that.
Okay, so I grew up in a very, very artistic home. I was born to parents who appreciated art in different forms, whether it was in music or whether it was in actual art, collection of art, whether it was in theater and dressing. They appreciated art in all ramifications. And I grew up surrounded by works of the very great artist, he's late now, David Dale.
Wow.
David Dale was amazing. So my house all the walls were covered with David Dale's works of art in deep etching, in beaded works and stuff. And when we were young, that my parents would travel a lot with us. We went to the different countries of West Africa, and I picked a lot up. My young mind kept soaking up different cultures and stuff. I didn't realize it, but I started to become somewhat internationally minded or global minded. So I didn't have this very narrow view of things. I always believed in cultures, in different cultures, and imbibing them and, making what I could make out of them. And I was taken to the theater to watch plays like Ogunde. And I remember that it was when I was taken to some drama presentation in this theater that I picked backstage And I saw costumes upon costumes and the actresses. And I was so taken by them, like, wow, look at all this color and stuff. So I got to appreciate and understand the art. Nigeria that time was amazing, when it comes to all this stuff. And I also grew up surrounded by music from Fela, Ode, So I got a lot of history, and then I would go to the village. My parents would take me to the village. You mentioned Imesile. I was actually born in Imesile.
Wow.
It wasn't planned, but I sort of popped out 3 weeks before. My mother was there serving the Methodist church because they saw her through school. And my father came to pick her up. And on the day that he picked her up to take her to Lagos to have this child, the child popped out. Didn't have any clothes or anything. So my mother had to get some fabric from her aunt to sew quickly on a machine. And that was my first dress, designer, you see? So, so this is what happened with my parents. They introduced us to the music. They traveled with us. We went to different continents as well. We went to, I remember, but the first continent that they showed us was Africa, at least West Africa. I remember traveling in the car with them to Togo, and we were going through like that, and we got to Ghana, and they said, no, you're not allowed to come into Ghana.
Wow.
That one was Nigeria must go time. So we were not allowed entrance into Ghana, but it was amazing. So I grew up assimilating so much art, and then of course you mentioned that my mother was a very, very, very beautiful woman, and very, very elegant, but very, very tasteful.
Yeah.
My mother introduced me to also African wear. She wore her African clothes with so much pride. And so, of course, I remember when I was going to do my A-levels in England, I took all my adire and stuff, and it wasn't popular, but I just couldn't understand how they could not understand that this was amazing. These were beautiful pieces, so I wore them with pride. And this is how I developed so much pride in our own things, in our culture. And this is how I knew who we were. I knew who I was as an African. I was also surrounded with a lot of African history. I knew who the Ashantihene was. I knew who the Alaafin of Oyo was. I knew the Oni. I knew how the Yorubas came to be, So my culture was so rich that what I felt that I needed to do was to take this out in my own way and to share it with other people, to enrich other people. I felt that I needed to enrich people, not the other way around, even though I could still learn from other cultures.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. You're so simply dressed, always simply dressed. And when I look at your images, those brides, oh my God, they look so gorgeous after you've clad them with your wonderful creations. I hope we'll get to see some of those designs as we go along. But let us look at your awards. You are listed as the first Black woman to present the collection at Alta Roma, Rome. And that was a celebrated fashion week. And also the first Nigerian to have a standalone show at the New York Fashion Week in 2014. And you started with a very humble beginning with Mnet Fashion of Face of Africa in 1998, and subsequently won the Mnet Anglo Gold African Design Award in New York. In 2000, upon nomination by the influential US Vogue editor Andre Leon Talley. And in 2001, you were rated number 37 on the African Almanac scale of 100 most influential Africans in the world. In April 2019, you won the Arise Fashion Weeks Award for Designer of the Year. And there are several other awards we cannot list here. Wow. They're all outstanding awards and clearly puts you on a high pedestal. So, a young designer from the town of Ondo, gets into the Lagos fashion world, doesn't stop there, but goes on to the world stage. How did all these come to fruition, and what have these awards translated to in terms of their impact? In terms of the impact for you and also your team? Maybe you want to talk about the structure of your organization. Just give us more information. We want to know, we want to learn, we want to be like Deola Sagoe.
Thank you so much. I'm truly humbled by that. And you see, my story, it's basically like fashion chose me. I didn't actually choose fashion, but it seemed like it's become a calling, and it's become a movement for me. And it was in 1998 that I was discovered by Mnet. At that time, if you remember, there was this thing called Face of Africa. And Mnet, now DSTV, partnered together with the biggest modeling agency in the world at that time, the Ford Modeling Agency in New York. And they came together and they said, look, let's start to choose some African girls to represent Africa, because before then, we only knew very few Africans like Iman, Africans who had more Caucasian features were those featured on the catwalks, you know. So they started this initiative, and of course they had to have designers. And as they went all over Africa, there were competitions in the north, the south, and the east and the west of Africa. And they got designers to make haute couture clothing for these models when they went to each region of Africa. And it actually started in 1997. Sorry, I have to back up a little bit, because I believe that it is important for everyone to understand how this whole thing started in Africa. When we talk about fashion now, this is actually what started it off.
Okay.
That collaboration between Mnet and Ford Models. And so in 1997, Mrs. Alakija was actually one of the designers who was one of the pioneer designers in this Mnet Face of Africa show. So what that did anyway was that it brought African fashion to the global stage for the first time. So in 1998, I was then discovered. This is 10 years after I had started my designing. I was then discovered, and I was also chosen as one of the designers. Okay. And this really is how I started to get known on the global stage. Wow. And maybe I need to share my screen again so that
please do,
so that people can appreciate this. Okay, so I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to do a. I have them in chronological order. Okay, there we go. Okay.
Yes, we can see it now. Yeah.
Okay, you can see. Okay, sorry, that's just my mom and my dad at a show. I don't know if you can recognize Oluchi Olandi and OG. Oluchi was the first Face of Africa. She won the Face of Africa. So that was after a show. My parents always went with me to shows.
Wow.
Okay, so sorry, these are all Deola's first designs, 1998. Okay, so this was how I entered onto the global stage.
Wow.
So in 1998, I was chosen as one of the designers from West Africa to present. And I decided that it was my ashoke that I was going to show to the world, because ashoke is authentic African fabric. Most other people were doing brocades and Ankara, Blisco, and stuff. But I wanted to show the haute couture of Africa, and I knew that the way to catch the world's attention was to make them in silhouettes that the world would understand. So in this slide, you have it's an ashoke jacket and a skirt, and I used the jigida beads on the waist as my belt. And what you see in the center, you've got a beaded. It's actually a beaded top right in the center. Then on the extreme right, I used Western fabric. But in order to bring Africa in again, I used porcupine quills as my trim. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, the way you mentioned ashoke, and I'm just wondering, because we know the classical ashoke or ashofi,
Yes.
What we have now actually done or woven from imported threads, and sometimes when you wear this ashoke or you even try to tie it, it's very uncomfortable.
Yes.
It's made from synthetic material. It's so stiff. So when you wear your agbada, it sounds like you're wearing a parachute. The other ones that are done with cotton, they're lighter. The older ones are very good on the skin, but these ones are so hard. And I know that if we do not import those threads, then we're not going to have ashoke. So I don't know if you have any thing to say about even the word authentic in terms of defining them. I mean, what is really authentic about African culture now, and the way things have moved on to bringing in things from outside that are not necessarily things that's come from within the continent.
Okay, so first and foremost, our asho ofi or ashoke used to be made from silk, from the yarn from silkworms. And they were actually silk. So that is very similar to what you call raw silk now. Okay, the Japanese do have it. The Japanese with the kimonos from the silk that they get from the silkworms. So this is what we used to use. But we did used to mix some imported cotton. Okay? So and this is when I was inspired by my mother's ipeles and geles, and I thought these things are just too beautiful to just tie on the head and just tie around your waist or just hold it. Why can't I make beautiful clothing in this? So I'm going to go back to that slide. Okay, so I thought to myself, in order to be able to make this thing globally acceptable, and for it to be more comfortable anyway, I need to be able to, if I wanted something to drape, I knew what kinds of yarns to use. I could then I could still use our silk threads, and I could also import silk yarn. Okay, so synthetic is not completely necessarily bad, because you have some synthetic yarn like rayon that are silky, and they don't cause any harm or cause any discomfort to the skin or to the body. So depending on who the weaver is, the weaver or the designer of the fabric can actually, the fabric can be as malleable as you want it to. It can be as drapey as you want it to, and that has been my own trajectory. If you look at the bottom skirt, that gold skirt, it's very, very, very soft. Okay, but if you look at it very closely, you'll see that it has that shimmer. It looks like liquid gold because some metallic yarn has been introduced into it.
Wow.
Okay,
and so it looks like satin. It looks like satin. Or is this silk?
Yes, it looks like satin. So it does look like satin. It looks like silk. But you know, there's all kinds. There's silk satin. There's also satin that is made not out of silk, that is made with polyester. You know, so basically, I get very innovative with yarn, and I mean, it's a lot of R&D, which costs quite a lot. But at the end of the day, I believe that the means justifies the end. So as I was saying, like from before, when we used to make our ashokes with, you know, we actually started making clothing out of raffia in Africa. And that was what the West saw and said we used to wear grass skirts. Yes. So it was actually raffia fabric. Then afterwards, the West actually did introduce threads, because if you look at some of those ashokes from the past, you will still see that metallic, you'll see that shimmer. And those are not from Africa, those came from outside Africa, you know. So, which is not bad, it just depends on the way you use it, on the way you do your weaving, you combine your yarn.
That's very interesting. So I think you should show us more of your images so that we can look at, you showed us the earlier ones. So these are the ones that are in between. So let's see more of the designs as they evolve.
Okay, so this from that one you just saw, this was 2000. This was New York, the very famous New York fashion show, where Africans showcased for the first time in history in the year 2000. And on this slide, you see again Oluchi Olandi in, this is all Ashoke. So this time, Mnet came together with Anglo Gold. At that time, Anglo Gold was the biggest gold producer in the world. And what they did was that they basically, after too many competitions and stuff, shortlisted from all over Africa, 16 designers to show in South Africa. And then they would then pick the 4 best designers to go to the New York Fashion Week for the first time. So this is how myself and 3 South Africans were chosen to go and do this show. Now, if you look on the left, you will see it's a choker with long chains. Everything is pure gold. Wow. So I had first of all done this design, because with my designs, I made my shoes, I made all my accessories. So the model went onto the catwalk with everything, and my shoes were all handmade. So everything that the model wore was all handmade. Anyway, so Anglo Gold then took my piece, this neck piece, and made everything in gold. This was worth about $350,000. Wow! In the year 2000. Yes, but it made such an amazing impact on the catwalk. And if you look at Oluchi Olandi, everything she's wearing is all ashoke. It's all woven, and you see how drapey and soft it is.
It's beautiful.
And on the bottom, you can see some like little bits dangling, and that's all pure gold. I'll take you to the next slide. This is another, again, this is still the same show. Again, this is all ashoke, pure ashoke. It's just in the weaving. I just got very innovative with the weaving and things. So the lady on the left is in shorts, and then a top that is all flowing with fringes, with all the yarn fringed. It's the other side. The top of that the top that the lady is wearing, I actually hand painted to give it an African geometrical design. And the shoes she's wearing, all made in ashoke.
So beautiful. So are these imported yarns, or the yarns that you use for the ashoke? Do you import them yourself, or you source from the market here?
I used to source from the market, but I have had to import all my threads now, because One day you find a color, you put out a collection, and then you go to the market the next day and you can't get the same color. Meanwhile, your clients have ordered that, they've seen that color and they've ordered it. And if you can't get it to be the same, especially when you start to, when you go international, you have to meet some standards, some international standards. And
very
so
important.
to mitigate all that, I started to import my yarn. And also because it helps me to be more in control.
Okay, because I've heard a lot of fashion designers complain about the quality of fabrics in Nigeria, and also for those who do fabric designing, sometimes go to the market, they find cotton, then find very low quality cotton, then they go again, they see polyester, they can't dye it and all of that. So there's always this complaint about the materials in the market that usually they look very cheap.
Yes.
And they're not durable. So I know that a lot of fashion designers complain about that, and they try to source the materials themselves.
Yeah, which is why which is why if you want to keep it, original, authentic, you need to. I think that you need to invest in that.
The supplies, yeah.
Yes.
I also saw that in your design, the previous slides you showed, you had jigida beads, you had cowries, you had this kind of motifs or beads that people complain about in present in Nigeria. If you have cowries, even as a design on your cloth, people think they are fetish, So I don't understand this. Where does this come from, And how has it been for you in your experience with clients coming in to say, no, I don't want this. I'm born again. I don't want to have this on my clothes. I can't wear this. And perhaps you want to talk about that.
Okay, well, sure. I'm born again as well. But you see, the thing is that God created everything. And people choose to do with what God created. People choose to do different things with what God created. So if I took cowries and I spat on them and made incantations with them, then they would become fetish. But if I go onto the seashore or whatever and I get my cowries, remember you saw the porcupine quills as well. I remember when I went to the market to get porcupine quills, they were like, what? And it was with the Elewe Omos. And they said, wow, it was like, wow, this lady is getting ready to kill somebody or some people, So it's what you make out of it. It's the heart behind what you're doing that matters. I mean, if I go back and show you one of the fabrics, one of the fabrics that I actually used, the fabric on the left.
Okay.
If you look at it very closely, I remember when I went to Ijebu to get those fabrics made, they said, oh, this is what the Ogboni people wear. And I was like, really? I said, well, I know I don't go around chanting at night or whatever, or anything like that. But I have made this, and what you see on the design that you see, I think it's the tortoise and something else, I am using it for a show. You understand?
Yes.
There's so many other things what about the irukere that they use? A king also carries the irukere.
Yes.
So basically all I'm trying to say is that it is the intent behind whatever it is that you are doing that makes it fetish or just innocent.
Wow. Okay, so we return to the house of Deola, or is it Deola Sagoe? I mean, maybe you want to make a clarification between the two, because I kept seeing that, But looking at your website, you have an amazing timeline that reflects your growth in the industry. What do you consider the greatest contribution of your fashion label to the fashion industry, and how did your team arrive at this point of recognition? And perhaps the next question that will come will be about mentorship. How do you intend to pass on these enormous skills that you have to the younger generation? Do you have younger people that you're mentoring that work with you and all of that? Maybe you want to flesh out on all of this.
Okay, so I think that if I go back, if I start from New York Fashion Week 2000, when I won the award, and also in 2001 when I was 37 out of 100 most influential Africans, what the world saw was Africa in a way that they'd never seen it before. Africa had suddenly refined and made Africa look so sophisticated. And Africa had used Africa's fabric. Africa had not used Dutch fabric, hadn't used any print fabric. Africa had used something authentic to Africa that dates back to the 11th century.
Yeah.
Yes, and this is history, this is culture. You know, other cultures appreciate you and respect you when they see you doing something, reimagining your own culture and putting it out there for contemporary use. You know, so I would say that the way that we did Ashoke had never really been done that way before. How, if I wanted a dress to look like a bias cut dress, all I needed to do was just manufacture my fabric to represent that. And if I wanted something structured, I knew what to do. You know, I had my own, all through the value chain, from manufacturing of fabric to final garment. It hadn't really been done that way before. And then the way that the African culture was fused together with Western culture, still using that Ashoke that people used to think, oh, it's too hard, it's too uncomfortable, or wow, this thing feels like grass on my skin, and stuff like that. So it was really the innovation that we brought to Ashoke and the silhouettes that went with it that was so globally appealing and acceptable that for the first time, the world was like, yes, Africa has something to offer that is not something that was passed on or that they are consuming, that probably the raw materials were taken out of Africa, refined and value added outside Africa and then brought back into Africa. I remember that at the show in the year 2000, a lot of African Americans came to me and said, wow, with tears in their eyes, Deola, thank you so much for putting Africa back on the map.
Wow.
And there were also these remarks, but what is it? What is this thing? What is this fabric that you've used? They couldn't believe it. Nigerians did not believe that it was Ashoke they were seeing. You know, people didn't believe it, that Ashoke could be like that. And I said, but listen, Ashoke, Yoruba, the English of it means top drawer clothing.
Yeah.
Ashoke.
Yes.
And Ashoke is only used on occasion. Understandably so, because Ashoke is hand woven. It's woven on time-honored looms that date back to the 11th century. And this is how we still weave it today. And why not? If you go to Japan, Japan still has their looms that they've had for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. They still have their techniques. If you go to Italy, if you go to France, they still have their lace. They have their French laces and Chantilly laces that are made by hand in all those cottage industries. So why can't Africa too put out our own high fashion fabric that is called Ashoke, that is made by hand, or by skilled craftsmen and women whose skills have been passed on for generations and generations.
Incredible.
So after we were able to do this, then and the West saw it, and even Nigerians started to really love it. I then started making, if you see on the right screen I'm sharing, that's a bag that was done in 1998 with ashoke. And then the balls that you see at the bottom were, it's brass, it's all brass, all made in West Africa. And the lady on the left, she's in an ashoke suit, you know? So people started to see how we could actually make our ashoke to be globally appealing. And I'm still going to go on to Komole because I know that is the star.
Yeah. We are waiting for that. We are waiting for Komole.
That's the star, because Komole has it really disrupted Yoruba, the Yoruba traditional wear as we know it. So so basically, sorry, I'm having a little bit of a problem with my sharing again.
Are you going on to Komole?
Yes, I'm just trying to onto Komole.
Yeah, but it's quite interesting what you've been saying about African culture, and to show that it's really very fluid in terms of definition. And this is very much, the character of your own label as well. The character of your brand, very fluid, and it's not static in any way. So perhaps when you show us the images of Komole, then we can begin to see how you've moved on, on that timeline that you set for yourself. Yeah.
Okay, so sorry, I'm a little bit behind, but I have so much explanations to do. But let me go to Komole, even though what you see is ashoke, and this is from 2002. But I just got very, very innovative with embroidery.
Okay.
Yes.
Hand or machine embroidery?
Hand embroidery and machine embroidery, but everything drawn by hand. When you say machine embroidery, it presupposes that you just put a design into. No, it's actually still the artisan. You still have to. Yeah.
Okay.
So these are all earlier works from 2002, but everything is all ashoke.
So we're going to open up the discussion as we go along so that people can ask questions before time runs out. There are questions already in the chat. So once you finish with all of these, then we can take some of the questions.
Okay, this is Komole. This is how Komole started.
Beautiful.
Komole started in 2012. And how did we disrupt everything with Komole? Well, growing up, our own traditional outfits for the Yoruba were the Iran Buba, and the men would wear their Bada, and they wore lace. And so all this time growing up, I thought lace was our own traditional fabric. I did not know that the lace we're talking about was gotten from Switzerland, somewhere in France, somewhere in Italy.
And Austria as well.
Yeah, exactly. Big one, Austria. So I thought, no, this is not traditional African outfit. It has to be traditional through and through. We have to be authentic, So in 2012, my answer to our own lace, since we'd already adopted it as our own fabric, I thought, okay, let me make lace out of our own handmade fabric, which is obviously the ashoke that I had been developing over the years. It took me 10 years to be able to develop what you see on the screen, this Komole cut. And all I was trying to do was look for how is it that I'm going to be able to put the yarn together and things to be able to achieve this lace cut. So I finally broke through in 2012, and this is the result of the breakthrough. So on the left, you see a buba. So then again, because African women are now much more, they're prouder of their bodies and their curves. You know, Iran buba tended to be pretty structureless. And also we did a lot of boo-boos and stuff. This is how we used to dress. But then I decided to take that African figure into consideration and decided to slim down the buba and also make the Iro in such a way that the contemporary African who didn't want to look African or dress African anymore, you know, I needed to put it out there in such a way that they would feel proud to wear their traditional wear. So this was the result. So you can see that the buba is cinched, and in this one I've used actually a silk to make the wrapper. So, and on the right you see a dress, and everything is all ashoke on that dress. In fact, the dress got so much acclaim that two museums have this dress. The Brighton Museum and there's a museum in Amsterdam that actually bought this dress to showcase in their museum. So this is how Komale, this was the humble beginnings of Komale, how Komale started.
These are so beautiful.
Thank you. So
yeah.
This is Komale.
Oh my God, this is lovely too.
Thank you. So in 2012, people did not understand it. People thought, what is Deola Sagoe doing again? And look at all these pale colors. Hey, who is she doing? What is she doing? What is she, you know, I got a lot of criticism from it. Then 2016, I decided to go at it again with this collection called Komale Candids. And by this time, you can see that I've evolved from that cut that you see on the left, which is now known as the classic cut, into the cut on the right. So now I became more dexterous with my design. So the ornateness started to come out as I practiced more and more, and I saw all the things that could come out. Okay, so this one on the left is now Iran Buba. This is the Komale mood, as people know Komale today. So as soon as we did this collection, people went gaga over it, and brides started to order it, and they started to wear it, and it became the new thing. So now when you see Yoruba brides know this is the mode. Everybody has gone after this mode. And the beautiful thing about it is that it's not only Yoruba brides that are wearing this, it's brides from other tribes within Nigeria, which means that it's something that unifies us. And this is what I've always wanted. I've always been a little bit of an activist in my own little way with clothing. So this is how Komale then blew up in 2016 and has kept on evolving. This is more of it. On the Komale on the right-hand side was a salute and appreciation of the Igbo culture. So basically, I've done something that looks like a double wrapper. And I said, look, nobody is left out in this. Whether you're Yoruba or Igbo, I've got something that also the Igbo people or our sisters from the East would love.
Wow.
So that's another one. That's again, but then again, these are all put on silk. So that's all Komale. And
very lovely, very lovely. Yeah, do you have more designs to show us
yes, I
of the
do.
komole?
Of
Okay,
the
let's see
komole.
that. Yes.
Yes. So the comoles that you will see, we're going to have to go back to this because these are the
Okay.
right. Now this is, so komole has evolved even to this.
So much.
You know, so this we called the Tropical Galactica collection. The whole theme behind it is aliens landing in the African rainforest. And what do they see? They see these exotic African beauties in these komoles. And so you see, it gets now, I get more daring and more bold with the designs, the geles.
The sheen.
And yes, the shape, yeah, because I'm big on shape, on structure, on colors. Now you see a lot of combination of colors, and you even see an Iran buba that has some sort of a color, you know. And I also let myself also go to Japan a bit because I see that the Japanese culture and the Yoruba culture, they're so intertwined. It's incredible. I believe that the Japanese definitely evolved from the Yoruba race.
That's a tall one. Thank you. Yeah, these are Afrofuturistic designs. They're really very lovely. Before we go on to the questions and the charts, we stop it here for now, but let's go to October 1st. We're coming back to these beautiful images that you have on the screen. October 1st by Kunle Afolayan, merited the Multi-Choice Africa Magic Viewers' Choice Award for Best Costume Designer. And this must have been a new experience for you, having designed clothing for the Lagos bourgeoisie or high class for decades. So tell us more about this encounter with film.
Okay, so actually, I met Kunle Afolayan at Mo Abudu's office. I had gone to see Mo. I think we were doing something together when she wanted to start Ebony Life, the Ebony Life TV. And I met Kunle Afolayan, and he said, well, later on he told me, he said, oh my God, okay, so I'm meeting this Deola Sagoe now, and I am about to do this film, and I've been trying to get this lady. I mean, if we partner together, because this brand is what it is, and with what she does, we're going to be able to do something amazing together. And so he took my number there, and he called me later. And all that kept going through my head when I met Kunle was, oh my God, this is the son of Ade Love. And I told him, I said, Kunle, I said, I had such a big crush on your dad as a child. Because when my parents would take us to the theater, we would go and watch Ade Love movies. And he used to do all these romantic movies and stuff then. So he laughed and he said, well, this is his son. And this is what I do and stuff. And then he sent me his videos. And I looked at his videos of former films that he'd done, and I could not believe the quality of his films. And I thought, my goodness, you're truly a chip of the old block. And he pitched everything to me because it had to do with history, because it had to do with the telling of Nigerian history and that independence history that a lot of young Nigerians don't even know about now. And because Kunle Afolayan is such an amazing producer, I said, okay, we'll go into this together. And he said, well, would you sponsor? And I thought, would I sponsor? He said, yes, would you sponsor and just do the costumes and stuff for us? You understand this stuff. You know period costumes. I've seen your work and I believe that you can do this. And I thought, okay, I'll do it. And this is how we started. And later on, Kunle now came to me and said, oh, I think you must star in the film. And I thought, no, I'm not an actress. I'm just a designer. Let me stop at that. But Kunle insisted that I had to play the part of Olufumelayo and some Kuti, because he felt that we had things in common.
That's so interesting.
So this is how I came to make the costumes. And this particular one that I'm sharing right now is of obviously, this is how old Nigerian policemen were dressed in those days. And of course, you see one of the people representing the colonial masters. They used to have on jodhpurs and like a safari long sleeve safari like jacket. And yeah, so this is how we made our debut into the world of film.
Very interesting. So we're going to go back to those images. I told you to freeze that image, but there are questions on the chats, and we're running out of time.
Okay. What image in particular would you?
But I think you've gone through this already, but it's fine. Maybe you just flip through the images so we can have the benefit of all of them before the end of this conversation. But I'm going to ask you questions from the Q&A and the chat. They're full of questions for you. One is, my daughter is interested. This is from Tayo Shonobi. My daughter is interested in fashion. I would like to know how long it takes to make the dresses on display. Look at this one. This will take 3 years.
Wow. Okay. So it's the amount of time that it takes for a bespoke, high fashion, high-end fabric to be made, which can be anything from about 6 to 8 weeks or even more, depending on what we're working with. We make all our fabric. So sometimes we might have to start from the very beginning of the value chain before we can get to the end of the value chain. And if you appreciate that all these things are mostly made by hand, then even actually the 6 to 8 weeks is actually quite a feat. More realistically, it takes like about 2 months, 3 months to be able to get one of these outfits. Like for instance, the outfits that you see that I'm sharing right now, they're very, very intricate. Everything you see on there is all made by hand, except the bit of French lace that you see in the center of the one on the right. So everything, even on the left, even that effect that you can see that looks like the feathers of a peacock, everything is handmade. So when things are handmade like this, they take quite a while to achieve. And we always aim for perfection.
I can see that very clearly. So another question from Omolara Ojoa. What would Deola Sagoe say about the benefits of the fashion shows, considering the huge capital outlays that would have been involved in planning for them? Were there a lot of sales, orders, etc.?
Okay, so that's such a very good question, because it is true that there's a lot of money and expense that goes into these fashion shows. And in Nigeria, shall I say, even the rest of Africa, we do not have those structures that would bring the rewards in big time for us yet. We only basically started doing these things as they should be done only in the last about 10 years. And so we're still, the market is still quite young, or rather the industry here in the structures.
Okay.
But what it is that the organizers of these shows are doing now is that they invite a lot of buyers from outside the country, from all over the world. They invite them to these shows. And when and or if a particular designer's collection appeals to somebody, might even be an investor, or some buyer or whatever. If the collection appeals, then that designer can be sure that they will get orders. But the thing also is that you have to be very, very prepared, because you have to know that you have to be able to scale up. Because if you cannot scale up, and say, for instance, one store, maybe a Neiman Marcus, for instance, from America, orders like about 1,000 of your pieces. Are you sure that you're going to be able to supply 1,000 pieces? And once you cannot meet up with those 1,000 pieces, you've lost your chance.
Wow.
Yeah. So also the great gain, what you gain is that people see what you're putting out there, and you pray that it's the right people who see it and come to buy. But nowadays, people, the shows are usually sponsored by huge companies, so it makes it easier on the designers. But when a designer decides to have a standalone show, that's quite a huge expense. And before the designer does that, the designer should make sure, because really and truly, the way that the fashion industry works is that the clothes you see on the catwalk, that is not the first time that they're actually being seen by the people who matter, who will buy. You would have already done your collection, and all these people would have come to see. They would have seen your lookbook that you should have produced, and so you would have probably gotten some orders. And then you come onto the catwalk, it's just really a showcase.
Okay, there's a question from Farouk Ojomo, and it says, nice one, Deola. Please, is there any room for internship for young designers in your company? I knew this question would come.
Yes. And I'm happy that people are so interested and passionate about it. There is room for internship, but you should also understand that there is process. Okay? A lot of our youngsters don't want to. Everything is all about instant this, instant that. It's not instant like that, okay, you'll be an intern and then the year after you're suddenly in the limelight. And it's not about the limelight. You will get there, but are you ready to be able to give yourself to be under that training and mentorship for a while?
Yeah, I mean, your organization is a very structured one, so I guess that they understand that. Because I was looking at your website and I saw that you just placed a deadline on orders for the year. So wow, So anyway, someone says here, thank you, Deola Sagoe. You are great. You make me feel great to be a Nigerian. Awesome work. Someone has asked about whether you weave your actual I think you mentioned that already, or whether you buy commercial weavers. So I guess that you produce, you also get what's in the market. Okay.
Yes, I have my own weavers. Yes.
Glad I'm here to learn all the stories of humble beginnings. Wow, this presentation is amazing. Thank you so much. Great works. Yeah. Amazing fabrics. The komole. Somebody's really falling in love with your komole. And that reminds me that komole is also, the dance movement where you dance and go down to the floor.
Yes. Absolutely. That's why it was named komole. And komole candies. It was all about komole candies was about the camera, because at that time, 2015 to 2016, everybody was doing selfies, that really started, social media, people started They wanted to be seen and stuff like that. So that's why it was actually named Komole Candidates Party. You know, you go to a party, the party is the life of the nation. That's just the way it is. Keeps everybody sort of like sane in the country at the moment. So this is also our lifestyle. We're a party people. And I thought to myself, also because the word is Yoruba, I always like to name, give honor to my culture and to my heritage.
That is
It's
so
very
beautiful.
important.
So well said. So well said. Thank you so much for that. A lot of praises. Wow, gorgeous fabrics. Oh my God, I love this. I'm learning a lot. Thank you for opening my eyes to a lot of ideas. Stunning. These are amazing. Well done, Ma. This is an eye opener. Wow, amazing. This is a lot. I would definitely rock these outfits. You better get some money to rock the outfit. Miriam, does the motif on Komole Ashoke have a cultural significance or meaning? Well, I think you explained about the lace fabric and the lace designs and all of that. But I also want to say that Ashoke itself has, the older ones had this hold in them from the weaving technique. And it also gave you that feeling that this was lace. And I think that this was already entrenched in the sensibilities of the weavers from quite early. So it became something that caught on very easily when lace fabrics were brought in from outside of Nigeria, because we already had perforations on our Ashoke or Ashofi. So it's not really totally new to us when we bring in these laces. We already started doing even the overlays of threads over the cloth. This threads, that go on the Ashoke itself that lead from the holes. So so it's also a way. I mean, the lace that was brought in, it was a commercial venture. They saw that Yoruba people were very fashionable, and they said, oh wow, we can make money for our government, we can make money for these weavers of lace. And so they introduced it to the market and we fell for it. But I'm so happy that you brought back Ashoke and brought it in a beautiful way and a very contemporary way. And you can see the comments and people are really responding to them. It's almost unbelievable that this is Ashoke. And I'm so also very glad that you have looked at the traditional, the older ones, the ones that are used for calls or associations like Ogboni you mentioned. I've seen amazing designs just for one by Ogboni people in collections. And I just said, this is so beautiful. This is amazing. Some of them are even almost like patchwork, so much layering of thread. Those artists were just exceptional. So I love the tropical galactica concept, celebrating nature through fashion. Thank you for your answer. Thank you for answering. As an 8-year-old who already wants to make her own clothes from paper and cut out fabrics, amazing discussion of textile fashion and African textile history and contemporary African fashions. Can you showcase the studio practices of the beautiful creations for the younger generation to learn? I love it. I put my hands up to talk. Oh, Professor Ebon Clark, I'm so sorry. If Prof is still in the house, we want her to make her comments. Professor Ebon Clark, are you there, ma? It's interesting because her father, he had a shop, he had a business that was very well entrenched in the UK. I'm sure she can talk about that a bit. If she's there, then we can allow her comment. Professor Ebon Clark wants to say a few words. So this is a great labor of love, Deola. Well done. Why do you use foreign seamstresses, and what is your contribution towards ensuring development of skilled workers within the country? That's a question for you.
Okay, good. I'm so glad about all these questions. But I started to use foreign tailors because I had something very sad happened, and it really scarred me. Way back in 2003, I had always had Nigerian tailors, West African tailors in my employ because I would have it no other way. But sadly, at that time, one of my clients came in from Abuja And somehow I had about 30 members of staff. She infiltrated my whole company, my staff, and she took away all my tailors and all the people that I had been training for 7 years and more. So all of a sudden, I was left with only 4 members of staff out of 30. And I thought that everything was going to collapse. In fact, I had given up. I remember that before they went away, they sabotaged my business. They told everybody, this place is about to go down. We're all moving to Abuja. They said they had come in with, they had enticed my staff with lots of money, with cars, with houses, whatever. So all I had been building just basically collapsed in like a few days. And in 2003, I had lost my mother in the November of 2003. But before my mother passed on, she had this Asian friend who lived around the same area as her. And he had come to see her, and he had, he talked to her, and then she said, oh, come and see what my daughter is doing. And he came in to the store and he saw it and he was like, wow, but would you mind if some of my people came in as well to work with you? Because you could train them, and with their own expertise as well, they could help train your own tailors. And so my mother started to work on it. But then she passed on in November 2003. It was 3 months or 4 months after my mother passed on that what happened. So between 2004 and 2006, basically everything basically collapsed because I had to start all over again. It wasn't until 2007 that I was finally able, that these people were finally able to come in. And that was how I started working with them. So I was so scarred that to be able to bring our own people in, I was so scared. And then I just stuck with those people until about 5 years ago, when the same thing happened again, now with these people. Again, a client of mine managed to infiltrate into those people, my foreign tailors again. And they did this. So my intellectual property again started to, So, but I am undaunted. I believe that times have changed also now. And I am ready to take the plunge again, knowing that affliction will not arise again the third time. I am the wiser. So this is the story. I don't feel happy to tell this story, but I needed you to be able to understand that regardless of whoever it is, I mean, these people come in and I train them, whether they're foreigners or our own people. One trains them, and then at the end of the day, having them leave like that just sets you back, or your whole intellectual property just sort of flies out. And that's why now you see a lot of Komole copies, because
all over the place.
Nobody, if my people hadn't been infiltrated, nobody would have been able to, they didn't catch on to it like that, because the process and all I've been through for so many years to be able to get it to this stage, it's a process. And but when people want to get somewhere too fast, this is what happens. But as I said, we're undaunted, and there's so many beautiful new things that I've been developing, and by God's grace, they will come out soon. and we will have the best structures. Yes.
Amen. Thank you very
so
much.
Now I've got intellectual property, you know, with legal. You have to do all these things. You have to copyright as much as you can. You have to, you know, but also the legal system has got to be working. And these are some of the challenges that we have in our country.
Thank you very much, Deola. Very sad story, but like you said, you're undaunted, and we look forward to chatting with you again. There's just one last comment here from Ola Familoni. Great presentation. I'm glad to see this in my lifetime. I'm Professor Ola Familoni, ICLED Business School, Lekki. I was an apparel designer and manufacturer in the US in the early 90s. Congratulations, you're doing great. And fantastic expose. Thank you. Are there IP and NDA contracts you have in place with your associates? Fashion law, they can't take your talent or your gift, Deola. There's plenty more where the others came from. Absolutely agree with that. Also, are you enforcing these rights? Well, thank you for being very open with your images and your work and your work process, your sources of inspiration. This is just amazing, and it gives a lot of hope to younger people. You can see questions coming from internship. In fact, the next fashion designer who's coming on is saying that she wants to connect with you. I've always been, I've always been, a source of inspiration for her, and I think you should connect with Deola Kamsin, who represents Delabik.
My namesake.
Yes, both of you are namesake. So it's wonderful. Thank you so much, Deola. We've gone overboard a bit by 3 minutes, so we have the next conversation with Deola Kamsin and Evelyn Sagoe coming up soon. It's a recorded interview, but they will stay on to take questions if we have the time. I don't think Professor Eben Clark is still in the house, but I'm sure that we can take a question some other time. But there are so many other questions here. And if you allow us, we'll send them to you. And if you can answer them, we can put them in the chat over the 3 days that we'll be having this conference. I really appreciate your coming here today, Deola. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to everybody who's asked questions. Thank you for the support. I'm very appreciative of everything. And by God's grace, forward ever, backward never.